"Ah," said Alice to the Mad Hatter, "I'm not the same person I was this morning." And the Mad Hatter replied, "I certainly hope not." So this is a program about evolution and change, about morphing. Welcome to Fishing Without Bait, a lifetime without definitive expectations, and full impact mindfulness exploding into your world, perhaps not sitting on that satin pillow and waiting for something to happen or wishing for something to happen. It's the action and effort. This is a challenge podcast. We challenge you to continue to change and evolve. We're not looking to help find people, we're looking to help create them. That's the essence of this program. And as perhaps listeners past episodes, you know that we're constantly changing and constantly evolving. So our recommendation is to continue to listen in and see how we change. And today we're joined by a special musical guest, Mr. Nick Eiben. And Mr. Nick, welcome aboard.
Hi, nice to be here, Jim. Thanks.
Okay, well, you might have some different thoughts on that at the end of this podcast. So, Nick, what we're always interested in is how people arrived at this point in life. What we're talking about consistently is it's right here and it's right now. We constantly advise people against time traveling, that frequent flyer miles to the past and the future with brief layovers in the present. So what our audience is interested in is about Mr. Nick right now. Tell us about Mr. Nick in this moment.
I work at a law office downtown. I also write and record music.
Okay. So we've often suggested to people that working interferes with our free time too much. And what we help people do is understand reality also.
Mhm.
The reality is that you can't stop at the gas station and fill your tank with best wishes and good intentions.
That is true.
So we do need some connection with reality in order to live in this world. However, what I'm hearing is it sounds like your passion is writing and singing.
I started playing guitar when I was around 12 years old, and from an early age, I wrote short stories, and then later that turned into more poems, and just sort of naturally worked its way into lyrics. I always try to write my lyrics so that they will stand on their own, as if you were only reading it. Because with music, there are a lot of songs where if you only read the words without everything happening around it, they're not very good, if I may say.
Well, if you look at some lyrics to some rock songs, which I certainly love, and I know you do
Right.
too, if you would just look at the lyrics, you'd think, who wrote this?
Right, exactly.
What does this mean?
Right. So, you're able to make up for a, let's say, weakness in lyrics with a great voice or music around it. I don't have a particularly great voice, so I try to make sure I always have strong words.
So what you're saying is that you don't put poems to music, you put music to poems.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's kind of the way that we like to do things here on Fishing Without Bait. We like to take different perspectives. We like to take the other viewpoint. So what we're hearing from you, and I hope our audience catches on to this, is that from an early age you used your creativity and imagination.
Yes. I always enjoyed writing and such.
Okay. So I don't know how many other 12-year-old young men are involved in that. I hope more. Okay, because sometimes the males in this society, they have this template that's pressed upon them that they're supposed to do this, they're supposed to do that. Okay, but it sounds like you said, okay, I'm going to do what I choose.
I was also, I'm an only child, so most of the time I had to entertain myself,
Hmm.
like as well. So I'm sure that probably played a role in that.
Okay, so in the 12-step world where I'm from, we often
Mhm.
say that when we're by ourselves, we're with bad company.
Mhm.
However, it sounds like in your particular instance, when you were by yourself, you learned how to actually make friends with yourself.
Mhm. That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah.
Hmm. So, of all the people that we deal with in the world and all the situations, who do you spend more time with other than yourself? You're with yourself all the time.
Currently, it usually is just myself.
Hmm.
Other than when I'm at work, it's usually myself.
So we're always with ourselves,
Right.
which lends the notion to if you're with yourself all the time, wouldn't it there follow that you might want to really get to know yourself a little better?
Yeah, it's a good. Yeah.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So that's what we do. It seems like we're able to have relationships with other people. We're able to give solid, good advice, be empathetic, deal with people in a particularly way. However, it seems like we can't do that to ourselves.
Right. Yeah, it seems, like a lot of the time everyone's trying to always have something happening, and they're always, you know, out, or rather th- than having just moments on your own of, reading or reflecting or.
What we try to do here is to help people change the dialogue, change the script that is going on inside of their head.
Mhm.
And we call the mind, on this show anyway, a dysregulated thinker. Okay. And we try to understand that there's an I self. When you say to yourself, I told myself, who hasn't said that to themselves?
Right.
So the myself we consider the dysregulated thinker, and the I is your authentic self. Okay. So
Mhm.
it sounds like some of this dialogue that you were having with yourself you put into words, you put into poems.
I didn't really start writing songs until I was around 19 or 20. Prior to that, I was always into like a creative writing classes in school,
Mm.
journalism, and like that's more of the track I was on. So it was around when I was in school when I was like 19 is where I really started trying to um, write songs. Prior to that, I was just playing the guitar, and trying to play in uh, groups,
Mm.
and play around. I really hadn't made an effort yet, you know, to have it to write my own, um, and th-
Who were
those are
your influences, Nick? Who were your influences back then when you were younger and you decided to pick up the guitar?
my first influence, I would say, and was Elvis.
Ah,
My
that's the first time I've
yeah,
heard that from a musical
huh?
guest.
Really?
Yes.
My dad was a huge Elvis,
Ah.
and so he was always playing um, music around me. And although he didn't play an instrument, I credit, or I don't mean Elvis, I mean my
Mm-hmm.
uh, dad. He didn't play an instrument. However, I credit him with like my influences and where it all, like kind of started.
So your father, maybe inadvertently,
Yes.
by exposing you to the music world, and there was something about Elvis. I mean, Elvis had a lot of energy.
Mm-hmm.
It was infectious.
All right.
Obviously, was incredibly popular. You don't get called the king.
For nothing.
Yes. So the idea was, so what was it about Elvis that attracted you?
From the time I was little, probably, I mean, like even like 8 years old, maybe even younger than that, I would watch his movies and like his clips from TV and try to move uh, like him. I also love to dance, and so I just
Did you ever get up with a guitar and pretend you were Elvis,
oh I did
wailing it
oh
out?
I did that in front of the mirror, like all that whole cliche thing, holding like the like a uh, mop or
Hmm.
whatever, and playing or the racket, like all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, so I would just watch him and just like uh, mimic his moves and everything, the music. I
And
just really,
we would call that in our world we'd call that constructive daydreaming.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so daydreaming, you think you're wandering off into space.
Mhm.
There's also constructive daydreaming too. Okay, did you enjoy it, Nick? Did that give you a charge? Did that give you some excitement
It
doing that?
did.
Did
It
that give
did.
you pleasure?
It did.
Okay, give you joy. Good for you.
Yeah.
Good. That's exciting. And I'm
Mhm.
hoping everybody out there doesn't sit back and say, "Gee, that sounds strange. That sounds weird."
Yeah.
No, it's not. If you enjoy it, it isn't.
Mhm.
No one has a right to tell anybody how to think or how to feel. And as long as it doesn't interfere with anybody's health or happiness or welfare,
Right.
you do as you choose. Good for you. I'm really happy to hear that. So that kind of,
So that was like the groundwork.
yeah, it's got
Yeah.
you energized to
Right.
to move on, and that's what it takes. It takes some action and effort. So wonderful. So where did we go from our Elvis?
And so then, now this is where everything really changed. So I was like mainly into the oldies and Elvis and the uh, 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 doo wop and all that,
Ah,
and I still, like even now, like that's my,
hmm,
like love is all the old stuff like that, and then when I was in middle school, I had a friend who introduced me to heavy metal.
ah,
I did not know heavy metal at the time because I was only with I mean, he also played me classic rock, so I had listened to Cream and
hmm,
Hendrix and all
okay.
and everything. I really didn't know heavy metal yet, and a friend of mine introduced me to uh, uh, Metallica,
Ah,
and that just completely just you know changed me for
what was it?
everything.
What was it about Metallica? What was it about that sound?
Um,
It certainly wasn't doo-wop.
it was not doo-wop, but around the middle school age, high school age, you have a lot of, I guess you'd say, angst and anger and things inside you, and it was and it helps to have an outlet.
And that can express it. And then
Right,
sometimes when we're that young or maybe that inexperienced or haven't matured completely or haven't had enough life experiences,
hmm,
we know how we feel, we just can't express it.
right,
So when we hear a band with lyrics that resonate with us and they're saying that's how I feel,
hmm,
and I think that's, we were talking earlier before the show about Nirvana
right,
and how that resonated with a whole generation of people. Kurt Cobain gave the thoughts and the feelings of people who perhaps say, hey, that's exactly the
right.
way I feel.
Hmm. My playing, like I started out just like learning Elvis music and oldies music, which is really easy, just strum, strum, strum kind of stuff. And I was playing that, and then as I was into Metallica,
Yeah.
I was like, well, I gotta learn some of that. And I had a close to, I'd say, like a changing moment, I suppose you'd say. I um, I had uh, uh, seen them live
Oh, wow.
probably, let's see, maybe 3 times prior to when this happened, um, we had front row seats, and so I
Front row
was
seats at a Metallica
yeah,
concert.
and my hearing has never quite been the same. But I watched their guitar player Kirk Hammett,
Hmm.
like up front, like up close for the first time, and that's when I was like, like I have to learn how to play these songs. And the next day, I went to it was like National Record Mart, which existed back then, still existed back then, and I uh, uh, bought a Metallica song uh, book,
Okay.
and I sat down and
Hmm.
I started learning how to play the Metallica songs, and so that was my next like leap, I guess you would
So
say.
I would suspect you, myself, our listeners, everyone out there often says, I should do that or I
Hmm.
want to do that. However, it never occurs. It never happens. That never does it. So
Right.
you saw that and actually you put that thought into action. How did that happen? How did you actually go out and do it? You followed through.
Yeah. Oh, you're asking
Yes.
no, I just said, like I want to learn that, and the next morning when the store opened up, I went to the store, I
Hmm.
grabbed the book, and I sat in my room, and I was playing. I had to play it very, very slowly, note by note, so you couldn't even recognize it. Going like bump, 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 and just go over and over, and then once you hit that riff and it's actually right, you go, oh, I can do this,
Mm.
and then I'm learning the next part,
So
and
you were
then
you were giving yourself encouragement and support. So what
mm,
was sometimes on this program, what we do is help people identify these self-defeating words such as should or have to or need or must.
mhm,
And you could have sat there that night and said, "I have to get a songbook. I,
mhm,
I should get I should get a Metallica songbook." However, you transferred those wishes and hopes into action, and that's what impresses me. And I believe that's what our listeners are out there looking for. How
mhm,
did he do it? How
yeah,
did he do it? And when you're speaking to yourself and saying, "Hey, I did this," you're actually your own cheerleader. You're speaking to yourself like a friend.
right.
It's so nice to have yourself as a friend.
Sometimes you have to cheer yourself on to say because nobody else might do it for you, so you really kind of have to.
Well, when
Well,
when
to
we
start,
when we hear from other people, that's nice. Okay,
yeah,
oh, you did well, son, or I'm proud of you. Blah
yeah.
blah 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 blah. Well, a lot of people think, well,
Well,
yeah,
that's your parents,
yeah,
so
you
yeah.
have to
Oh,
tell me that.
exactly, exactly. That's
Okay,
always a thing. Like,
but it
well,
but
yeah.
it but it means a lot more when you actually hear the sound of your own voice saying to yourself, "You know what? I did okay."
Hi, I'm Nick Eiben, and this is my song "Fragile." Fragile beauty, restless creature, let me be your only teacher. Was the pleasure worth the pain, or did it all end up the same? And I'll remember you. There's a sinner by your side, but there's an angel deep inside. I found inspiration
please check out our website at fishingwithoutbait.com, where you can listen to the show, comment on our discussions, and find out where you can subscribe to our podcast. If you're interested in flying the colors of Fishing Without Bait, click the shop icon on our website. We have clothing, mugs, cell phone cases, and so much more. Show the world that you fish without bait. This show is a member of the Sorgatron Media Podcast Network. Find out more at sorgatronmedia.com.